to Jamaica, and Mrs. Vrungsung. Honorable Earl Jarrett OJ, the chairman of the UE Mona Campus Council. Professor Michael Taylor, Dean of the FST, Faculty of Science and Technology. Dr. Akshay Mansingh, Dean of the Faculty of Sport and husband of the Lady of the Hour. Professor Marcio Roy, Director of the Office of Graduate Studies and Research here on Mona, at the Mona campus. I see a number of former deans that are here. In particular, we also have Professor, where is he? Ishin Kumbakawa, yes. Hi, Prof, good evening. And former Deputy Principal of the Mona campus. I see Mr. Jonathan Archie. Is that you, Mr. Archie? Yes. Assistant Registrar for the Mona campus. Other deans, deputy deans, and associate deans, heads of departments. I also see quite a few of the Faculty of Science and Technology, colleagues, other distinguished guests, and specially invited guests, family, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Only Gunjan. What a list. I know for a fact that we are all here this evening to celebrate Gunjan and not to hear me speak. I am Curtis Busby Earl, by the way. I'm the Associate Dean for Graduate Studies and Research in the Faculty of Science and Technology. I will be as brief as possible in all of the instances that I am required to speak this evening, because we want to keep as much time as possible for the Lady of the Hour, who we're here to celebrate, in particular her academic accomplishment, Professor Gunjan Mansingh. Now, Gunjan, I can still call her Gunjan. She's my older, emphasis on older, adopted sister. And as we said, we're here to celebrate at least one of her persona, that's her intellect. But, of course, like everyone else, there are many other such facets. We know as well that Gunjan is a sociable individual, yeah? And that is evidenced by the guest list that we have here today. I just try to keep things short, but the guest list is long. I didn't know, and I don't think any of you also knew, that Gunjan is also a budding musical arranger. And I think you'll be forgiven if you had assumed, like I did, that the music would maybe have included the sweet tones of a sitar or the thumping beats of a tassa drum, because after all, she is from India. But as you heard when you came in, the music that was being played was arranged by Gunjan. She'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, during her lecture this evening. And so I would also like to especially welcome the speakers. So we're going to hear from the Indian High Commissioner. We're also going to hear from a gentleman whose company it's always a pleasure to be in, and that's Professor Kweku Moata Ose Bryson. We'll also hear from, well, given the weather that we're currently experiencing, where there is thunder, there's always lightning, right? So we're sure to hear from one Professor Lila Rao Graham. We'll also hear from one of Gunjan's former students, Dr. Dean Jones, right? And we'll also hear finally from the head of the family, that is the Department of Computing, and that's Dr. Daniel Folcom. But first, I would now like to invite our Dean of this great Faculty of Science and Technology, Professor Michael Taylor, to say a word or two to you, our audience. Prof. Taylor.
Colleagues, friends, good evening. I too am not the person you are here to listen to, so I will also keep it short, but I will be smarter than Curtis and not mention things like younger or old or any of those words. But I beg you to allow me to, first of all, just adopt all the protocols extended by our chairman, and then welcome you to the University of the West Indies, welcome you to the Faculty of Science and Technology, and to this inaugural professorial lecture by Professor Gunjan Mansingh. Professorial lectures are significant occasions in the life of the university, and certainly in the life of a faculty. And they're significant because, firstly, they allow us to recognize that excellence and high standards of achievement reside within our midst. In Jamaican parlance, professorial lectures are important because they allow us to big up the stars amongst us. Today we hear our star and Mansingh and celebrate her advancement to the rank of professor. But professorial lectures are also allow us as an academic community to present to the general as well as our own university community the research and innovation happening on our campus. Without a doubt, you will hear in the lecture this evening about the sustained innovations in the field of computing initiated by Prof. Gunjan Mansingh and her colleagues right here at the UWI-Mona. Thank you, Professor Mansingh, for allowing the faculty to take a bow through your achievements. And then professorial lectures are significant because they also serve as a means of motivating our partners to support the UWI in our groundbreaking tradition of advancing knowledge and impacting lives. In particular, this professorial lecture allows us to invite everybody present to jump on the bandwagon because, again in my poor Jamaican parlance, things are going in science at UWI-Mona. Truth is that, as a faculty, we are on a quest to have science and technology fulfill its much-touted role as a catalyst for national development. That is the motivation, for example, for our successful BOOST program, the most innovative scholarship scheme you'll find in the world that is filling the STEM teacher gap in our schools. 42 UWI graduates now placed in over 30 schools across 7 parishes in the last 2 years, transforming the lives of over 2,000 students. It's also the motivation behind new collaborative international grants that have come on stream in our faculty in the last 3 years, addressing issues related to the environment, AI, food processing, natural products, electric vehicles, disaster risk reduction, climate services, biosensor-driven products, quantum computing, pest management, agile businesses, cybersecurity, biotechnology, farm processes in farming, and apologies to those I have excluded. The point is that even before we get the things we are lobbying hard for as a science faculty to exponentially increase the transformative impact of science, things like a national science research fund, a national tax incentive scheme that matches funds spent by the private sector when they seek local science and technology solutions as opposed to looking elsewhere. Deliberate capital investment in science and technology centers of excellence located on our university campuses and utilizing our star potential and focused on national S&T priorities. Yes, even before we get these things, the faculty is already producing contextual science of the highest quality that is making a difference. That is what will be evidenced in the lecture today. Prof. Mansingh, our second homegrown professor in computing, is testament to good, relevant, and transformative science already coming out of our faculty. So we are proud that today is also the first of 3 inaugural professorial lectures which will occur in this academic year, and I hope to see you all here for the other 2. It also follows on 2 we have had in the last 2 years. But if you don't believe me, you don't need to take my word for it. Let me close with a quote from one of the international assessors for Dr. Mansingh's candidacy for professor. Dr. Mansingh's research area, spanning data mining, machine learning, decision support systems, knowledge management, and expert systems, reflects expertise and an ability to navigate across different domains of research. Her specific works on knowledge management and its impact on socioeconomic development in developing countries is impressive. A review of her publications in these domains suggests that her work is original, relevant for research, teaching, and practice. In the ICT 4D community particularly, the debate continues on the relevance of academic research for practice. Dr. Gunjan Mansingh's work exemplifies this fine balance. Friends, welcome again to what promises to be an evening that will be well spent celebrating excellence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Taylor. And so to keep things moving, we now have the first of a series of remarks to be made by some of our esteemed guests. And so I'd like to invite to the podium His Excellency, Mr. Masakui Rungsong, who is the Indian High Commissioner to Jamaica, to make a few remarks about our Lady of the Hour, Professor Mansingh. Mr. Rungsong.
Thank you, Program Director. Honorable Mark Golding, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Jared O.J., Chairman of the University of West Indies, Mona Campus, Professor Michael Taylor, Dean of the Faculty of Science and Technology, Dr. Akshay Mansingh, Dean of the Faculty of Sports, and Professor Marcia Roy, Director of the Office of the Graduate Studies and Research, Mona Campus. Dignitaries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Program Director has given adequate hint that I should be brief. This is not my time, it is Professor Gunjan's day. Professor, I think I cannot agree with you more on whatever you have said about Professor Gunjan. I do not have the privilege of knowing Professor Gunjan for many years as a childhood friend, a classmate, a family friend, etc. Nor are we professional colleagues that I know her distinguished career at close quarters. In that sense, I am an outsider and therefore least qualified and equipped to speak about the person Professor Gunjan is. However, this disadvantage grants me the advantage to speak about her objectively and dispassionately on the basis of the CV that is given to me, which runs into several pages, and 3 privileged and preordained years of knowing her in the last 3 years. I will not therefore be surprised at all if by the end of this program, if you walk away with the impression that my remarks are the most honest of all. We are here today, ladies and gentlemen, to celebrate the outstanding achievements of Professor Gunjan, whose dedication, expertise, and tireless commitment to the field of data science have culminated in this momentous occasion, her professor lecture titled Coffee, Asthma, Creativity, Traversing a Helix of Intellectual and Artificial Pathway. It makes my head dizzy. I know very little about coffee, much less about asthma. And on the subject as a whole, I can hardly make head and tail of it. I therefore curiously look forward to your lecture, Professor Gunjan. I am mindful of my role as to give a brief remark, and it pains me to realize that the immenseness of your achievement cannot be described in the economy of words and time. And also without any intention of sowing discord in the family, and I hope I lack that capability of doing, I am also consciously delinking your surname from your name for this moment so that you stand on your own merit. Actually, I have this uneasy feeling that your surname can be, at times, towering and imposing. As resourceful mind and as thirsty for new learnings as Professor Gunjan is, she has the curiosity of a child and the knowledge of a sage. She is equally a teacher and a student, so she will agree with me. Attributes that are exclusive for many people and therefore difficult to marry them into one person. A good human being, a friend to all, down to earth, humble, and never even flirted with any form and shade of idea opposed to her principles. A person who calls spade a spade, even if it has to be at a cost, even it has to cost her dearly. Honest and impeccable integrity that Professor Gunjan is. I am still awaiting your surname. Ladies and gentlemen, as I flip through the pages of her voluminous curricula vitae that runs into several pages, as I am used to reading not more than 2 pages of CVs of ministers and other dignitaries in former occasions, I have no hesitation to attest that throughout her illustrious career, Professor Gunjan has not only demonstrated a profound mastery of her subject, but has also continually inspired and mentored several students and colleagues. Her unwavering pursuit of knowledge, innovation, innovative research contributions, and dedication to academic excellence have left an indelible mark on the institution she serves. A research-oriented mind of fine quality as testified by the number of publications to her credit, high order of dedication to her work, 20 years of consistent quality service to academics, industry, and government have earned her the recognition and the name that she deserves, the title of professorship. Simply put, the road to her eminence is excellence. It is natural for us to expect academic distinction from a professor of a renowned institution as University of West Indies. But what makes Professor Gunjan even more distinct as a boundary pusher is that she explores and navigates through the terrain of other domains with equal curiosity, dexterity, and proficiency. Her resourceful ability from her early days of academic career to link her academic knowledge with industry and government functioning is a commendable endeavor, bringing in a far-reaching benefit to all stakeholders. This synergy fosters innovation, knowledge exchange, and real-world applicability of research. It promotes economic growth, informed policy making, and a well-rounded education for her students. Kudos, Professor Gunjan, on your active involvement in bridging the gaps of these vital sectors. Today's lecture, therefore, is not only a testament to her exceptional scholarship, but also, and more so, her ability to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Finally, as I promised that, I assure that I will keep it brief. I can proudly say that Professor Gunjan, a holder of Indian passport, but dedicating her most productive years of her life for the well-being and development of a friendly, beautiful island country called Jamaica, is a true reflection of Indian value and philosophy anchored on ancient wisdom, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the world is one family. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So I would now like to invite a gentleman who once held the title here on the position visiting professor. And he is always very interesting to be around because of the conversations, because of the laughter. I hope you get to hear him and see him laugh tonight as well. He's always very, 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 very good. And he was also Gunjan's supervisor. And as Gunjan also refers to him, her mentor. And so I'd like to invite Professor Kweku Mwata Ose Bryson to say a few words on behalf of Dr. and Professor Mansingh. There's a smile.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I don't know something, so somebody said I'm adopting all protocols observed. So I'm going to say the same thing. Now, Curtis said I'm going to say a few words. I can't promise you a few, but I can tell you they're going to be truthful. So, you should always start a story close to when it starts rather than in the middle. So let me start speaking. In June 2006, the PhD program in Information Systems had a multi-day conference in which several potential PhD supervisors were invited to do presentations of their work, listen to the students' presentations, and interact with the students. During this conference, a North American-based colleague professor, who had then only known Gunjan for a few days, referred to her as being a relational person. And that was actually a very correct description. Now, decades earlier, when I was in my late teenage years, and Gunjan was then a toddler, I had met another relational person. His name is Hugh Denton Campbell. We used to call him Butchie, or I would call him Butcho, or Bucho, but we long time say Butchie. Now, I'm not just saying this because I'm the godfather of his daughter, but actually, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, and I'll tell you how. So in 1976, I was an unemployed year graduate, but I was also taking computer programming at IBM. But she wasn't working at Life of Jamaica, told the Life of Jamaica management about me, and that is how I got my first information systems job. Now, Butchie is a master of traditional social networking. So by the early 2000s, he had known George Stewart for some time. Now, George Stewart was a student in the PhD program. So a few months after the program started, Butchie told George about me, and the CV was shared with the administrators. And that is how, through that relational path, I made my entry into one of the pathways of Gunjan's intellectual helix. There were around 17 students when the program started, when I was there. And my first course was in knowledge management in spring of 2005. And several of the students found the course to be particularly intimidating, and Gunjan was one of them. But she didn't hold it against me, because during the daytime I was located in the Department of Computing building, and Gunjan would take me out to lunch sometimes, even to a place called Liberty, where I got some vegan food. And what was also good, we had academic interactions outside of the classroom. And many positives resulted, including her first journal paper in a reputable information systems journal. Gunjan was one of the 4 students for whom I would be their PhD thesis supervisor. And the period of supervision could be conveniently described as being interesting, with several interactions across the bandwidth of the emotional spectrum. I used to tell my students that they should desire to reach the intellectual level that's worthy of a PhD in the same way as a thirsty person in the desert would crave for water. Well, Gunjan did develop that thirst. And in May of 2009, she defended her thesis successfully. Now, my formal association with the PhD program ended with the graduation of 4 students, Dr. Gunjan Mansingh, Dr. Carlin Barclay, and Dr. George Stewart. The previous year, Dr. Lila Rao had graduated. Gunjan won't stop interacting with me. She continued the interaction even beyond what was required of the papers we were co-authoring. Well, it may sound funny, but others benefited because of that frequent interaction, she was extremely influential in getting me to agree to serve as a formal mentor to the doctoral students in the Department of Computing. And together for around 10 years, we supervised several students. And one thing that was very, very evident, and I have to say this, is that she consistently showed caring towards her PhD students. And that is not a very common thing. Now, those of you who know Gunjan know that for her, having fun and enjoying life is non-negotiable. But she's also a very, very hard worker. So when she was offered the position to be head of department in 2017, I knew it was vital for her to give high-quality leadership in a job that I knew could be very time-consuming. But there was also the demand of our very dynamic social life. So I wonder, how was she going to do this? I asked her, and she gave me an answer by word, but more impressively, over the 6 years that she was department head, she took actions that I can sincerely say were worthy of admiration and emulation, and which raised the profile of the department and its offerings. And again, what was always showing was her caring for colleagues, for students, and for the department itself. And I have to also say, she showed much kindness towards me. Now, Gunjan typically operates in what I would call relationally oriented self-interest, in which it's self-interest. It's self-interest because she's smart enough to have self-interest. But she considers also seriously how she can be effective in helping others to achieve their own self-interest. And I think that's one of the qualities which have made her earn the respect of the trust, respect, and even affection of her colleagues and other persons who know her. I'm closing now. During the early years, I used to call her Gunjan. But after she earned her PhD, I couldn't call her Dr. Mansingh because her husband was already Dr. Mansingh. So I would call her Dr. Mrs. Mansingh. Now she has attained the rank of full professor. I again can't call her Professor Mansingh because her father-in-law was Professor Mansingh and her mother-in-law had a professorial rank. So I'll just Dr. Mrs. Gunjan Mansingh. Today, I sincerely join with others in you and thank a full professor and to express my gratitude for being part of your journey.
Thank you very much, Professor Barrison. Was I correct? And you saw the smile, right? Mm. So at this time, we have, and the mic drop, correct. Before continuing, I would like to acknowledge and welcome Her Excellency, Mrs. Judith Slater, the High Commissioner, the British High Commissioner, to Jamaica, and Mr. Philip Dewall. Evening, welcome. And I'm also now seeing at the back our Deputy, our Deputy Dean, Professor Tanisha Stevens. And I think I am also seeing our Principal, Professor Denzel. Is that you, Professor Williams? Yes, it is. Welcome, Prof. And I would, at this point, like to ask that we have a video from Dr. Dean Jones, who is, as Ed mentioned earlier, Prof. Mansingh. I have to get used to it too. Gunjan's former student, and he also has some kind words that he would like to share with us regarding Professor Mansingh. If you could kindly play that video for us.
Hello. I'm Dean Jones, and I'm privileged to have had the opportunity to work under the mentorship of Gunjan Mansingh, and I'm honored to share some of my experiences with her in this regard. From the very beginning of my academic journey with her, I met a very knowledgeable and accomplished educator who was very passionate about her work and her discipline. Yet, in our discussions, she remained approachable. She had a remarkable ability to adapt to my academic needs, be it direct instruction on some concept that I didn't yet know, or guiding me through a thorough intellectual exploration of others that I thought I knew. I appreciate all the academic papers she has so graciously shared in service of the latter. She taught by example how to be curious and hungry for knowledge, and how to approach academic study with rigor. Throughout the years, her support has been unwavering, drawing not only on her vast knowledge and expertise, but also on her resourcefulness in connecting with individuals who could provide valuable insights. She has truly been instrumental in facilitating and enriching academic environment. Her contributions are not only limited to my academic journey though. I benefited from her empathy and empowerment on a personal level, and I have seen this on offer to any and everyone. I have seen her give selflessly and tirelessly of herself in any way she can to individuals and to broader society. How she's able to sustain this still eludes me to this day. So Doc, Professor Mansingh, you ushered me into a new chapter of my journey in academia, and you continue to inspire me to become a better academic, a better professional, a better human. For that, I am infinitely grateful. I take great pride and joy in witnessing your passage into this new chapter of your journey. You will always be my mentor, academic and otherwise. Continue to be that beacon, that model for excellence. Congrats and thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, when I first joined this esteemed institution, we just had to follow. System. To listen to. So I would like to now welcome Lila Rao Graham, Professor.
I can still call you Curtis. I'll also say I don't know which one I am. So first, let me say I deem it an esteemed honor to be asked to introduce my longtime friend and colleague. Given that I must start by introducing in research, machine learning, decision support systems, expert systems, knowledge management, research to several critical domains in Jamaica, including healthcare, agriculture, and the financial sector. In her quest to mentor and influence the next generation, she has shared her knowledge through her engagements with students in various contexts, including teaching various courses related to her research, both at the graduate and undergraduate level, including business intelligence, programming, artificial intelligence, data visualization, and knowledge discovery and analytics. She has supervised and co-supervised 5 PhD students and over 20 master's students in computer and data science. Not content to confine her knowledge and research to the halls of academia, she has a stellar record of public service to both the public and private sectors, where she has served as the chairperson of eGov Jamaica Limited and is a member of the Digital Transformation Advisory Council under the Office of the Prime Minister. She is the Vice President of Innovation and Education of Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance. It's very hard for me to say that one. It's formerly Jamaica Computer Society, which I know so well. She's also a member of the Steering Committee for CARICOM Girls in ICT and a board director of the Jamaica National Financial Group. A proud graduate of the UWI-MONA, where she pursued both an MPhil in computer science and a PhD in information systems, Prof. Mansingh, I should say Professor Dr. Mrs. Gunjan Mansingh, right? You can see he will always be my mentor, to serve her alma mater with distinction. But that would be Gunjan the academic. It would be remiss of me not to say something about Gunjan, my friend. I first met Gunjan at the Department of Computing, where we both worked. She says we met before, but I didn't speak to her. She will tell you she was a little bit skeptical of me, given our first encounter. And if you know both of us, you know that we're quite opposite. However, our opposite personalities did not deter us from quickly becoming good friends, research collaborators, and conference travel partners. In fact, this opposite nature proved to be quite beneficial to motivating each other along the way. We went through our PhD journey together. It is so fitting that a number of those critical to the success of this program are here today. Professor Evan Duggan, I know Prof. Gordon Shirley, I don't know if he's reached, but I know he's trying to get here through the traffic, and Professor Osei Bryson, who supervised both of us and made this journey even more enjoyable. Working together, motivating each other during the PhD journey made the process a lot more, bearable, but it was actually enjoyable. A few times, though, I had to keep her in check. When she would go out socializing in the evening, coming in the next day saying, "I'm just so tired, I had to go out to dinner last night." I would correct her and say, oh, you chose to go to dinner last night. So let's get going, especially as we knew we had to report to our taskmaster in short time. But this balance, as many have said before, is also what I admire about Gunjan. She has been extremely successful in her academic career while always making the time to socialize with family and friends. Those here that know her well know she is a kind, supportive, and fun friend, colleague, and leader. At this time, I would like to welcome Professor Gunjan Mansingh for her inaugural professorial lecture entitled Coffee, Asthma, Creativity, Traversing a Helix of Intellectual and Artificial Pathways. It also gives me a headache. Welcome.
Everyone, is the microphone? It's on now. Thank you. Lila stole some of my lines. What can I say? Well, you all have come in this weather. What can I say? That I'm really glad that you're here. I hope I won't bore you. Sometimes when I'm teaching in this room is full of young people. And they're very attentive, by the way, so I hope that you will do better than them. So if anyone's sleeping, the chalk days are gone that you could throw them, but I would say, excuse me, remember that we are supposed to be in a classroom. So the title of my talk, it seems to have caused a lot of controversy and curiosity, I hope. Coffee, Asthma, Creativity, Traversing a Helix of Intellectual and Artificial Pathways. In case you're wondering, what is she going to be talking about? I am a data scientist. I can only speak about data and its derivatives. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, but in this context. So let's see how this talk evolves. I want to start this evening's talk with a quote from Bhagavad Gita. Niyantam kuru karmartvam karma jayo ha karmana sharira yatra pichate na prasiddha yed karmana. Someone once told me that professors must profess. That was told to me in a meeting, and taking that in my mind, I said that, okay, maybe I need my own addition to this quote. So my quote is, so this, by the way, this Bhagavad Gita quote translates to, action is superior to inaction, even if imperfect, then nothing at all. Even our basic bodily activities require effort. So my addition to this is, action is superior to inaction, and continued action guided by knowledge and reflection will lead to perfection. So in academia, you might have heard this phrase, publish or perish, right? So the notion of publish is this continued action that we are all supposed to be doing. I want to speak a bit about Gunjan, my foundation, right? The Srivastav in Gunjan Srivastav, which I think Prof used to ensure that I have GSM as my acronym and not just GM. So my foundation, my parents, my mother, a retired school teacher, Rachna, who did her B.Ed exam after my father passed, and she did her B.Ed exam a day after my sister's wedding. And we were all very worried that she was going to fail. But she did very well, and she went on to have a successful career. My father, late Wing Commander Vijay Kumar Srivastava, who was an electrical engineer in the Indian Air Force, as you can see him in this uniform, and he used to work with radars as an electrical engineer, and all the physics people will, of course, know about radars. Now, he used to be an IEEE member, and as a child, I used to see IEEE, pamphlets and material coming in our mail. Those were the days of the actual mail. And that acronym always had my fancy. I didn't know what it was, but I was very small to even understand what IEEE was. But for those who are not in the technology field, when IEEE conference or IEEE journals, when we get a paper into those, it's a big deal. So, so it's only now when I came, I realized what IEEE meant. And it used to please me to see that my father used to be a member of that association. So hence you can see that my foundation for teaching and technology was laid by them. My sister is there, Monica, on the other side with her family. Now she's a budding businesswoman in Mumbai, and often anything nice I have is hers. When I came to Jamaica, which was in 1991, and since so many years, 32 years of being here, I have many mothers and sisters in this audience who I have met here. So now what can I speak about my pillars? I think, Prof, you spoke about them already. So they are my in-laws, but as there is no lawyer involved in our relationship, I refer to them as Amma and Papa. Amma, Mrs. Lakshmi Mansingh, was the first librarian in UWI, and I mean the entire UWI, to reach the professorial rank. Her picture actually still hangs outside the registry's conference room amongst the prominent women of UWI, and it makes me very proud every time I go there. She was, being a librarian, she was a quiet person, and she had to deal with me, so you can just imagine how difficult that was for her. But she did very well. And of course, the real professor of our family, Professor Ajay Mansingh, who walked these same hallways, maybe taught in this room. I see his PhD student, Dr. Dwight Robinson, sitting right here. And he started the Natural Products Institute, and he was its first director. And he recruited our very own now, Professor Delgoda from Oxford University, who was a young researcher at that time. So you can see with these two UV giants behind me, I had all the support that I needed at home. And of course, my umbilical cords, Ashima, Abhijay, and Atishay. Only Atishay is in the room, sitting right there, but you can't look for that sweet smile with the broken teeth. You actually have to look for a face full of fur, and you see him there. My oldest son, Abhijay, is not here, and what can I say? I'm so glad he's not here today, because he is with West Indies A in South Africa, and he just reached today. What can I say for the man who helped me build these umbilical cords? Huh? He stood next to me for the last 32 years, Akshay, and we are still not out. That's the language he understands, so I have to speak to him in that language. So I don't know about the century, but let's hope for the half century. So now, Curtis was referring to me as a sister. There are people in the department, computing department, I refer to them as my family. Reason being, we argue, we have disagreements, we force each other to do things, we pull each other's leg on negative concepts also, some things that probably I can't distinguish between a V and a W, and you should just see some of our chats when we were trying to just wish each other Happy Diwali. Whether it's with a V or a W, meaning if you see the chat, you would wonder, how are they talking to each other? But yes, we are one family. And the important thing is that we always look out for each other, and that is what makes us the family. Now, you see some pictures of even days gone by, some big giants in our department, Dr. Robinson, Dr. Mugisa, Mr. Harold, who had come from bursary. And during early days, when I was still a tutor, maybe in the department, I learned a lot about Jamaica. Initially, when we would take the orders, Mrs. Burke would be taking the orders for Christmas lunch. We would hear low sodium, low this, low that requirements. And when we went for lunch, a few Devon Duppies, and everything would be forgotten. So, I learned the power of Devon Duppies earlier on. Now, what can I say for my mentors? I don't know if Prof. Shirley is here. He's right here. So thank you, Prof. Shirley, for conceptualizing the PhD IS program. And as I was a student of that program. And what that program did was it brought our diaspora academics to our shores. So Professor Dugan and Professor Jose Bryson, who you heard from. He was quite scary in classroom, by the way, and Bunny was always very funny in classroom. So we had like contrasting lecturers. But Professor Jose Bryson I refer to him as my supervisor, and every time I call him my supervisor, he says he's a correctional officer. When I wrote to him the very first time before he came, I looked at his profile and I said, I would like to do my PhD under you. He thought I was a young man when he came, and then I hope that changed, that when he saw that I was a young lady. So he still continued with his supervision. I think he has given me the worst grade ever that we got in our PhD program. We had coursework. And Laila had to ban me from opening my mouth during lunchtime to ask him any question, because any question I asked him would be on the exam, and he would never give us the answer. He would let us explore the answer. So he's my mentor, my guru. Now, you all know what a GPS is. You all use GPSs? Global positioning systems, which it charts your journey, it shows you where you have to go, and it's your journey to make. So in Indian philosophy, we refer to a guru as a GPS, because the guru is, creating that path for you, but it's your journey to make, and that's the path you have to take. Now, I don't know if you've taken any wrong turns with the GPS and you hear, keep left, keep left. Sometimes you hear the irritation in the sound. Well, we used to hear that irritating sound all the time, and Laila could attest to that. Right, Laila? Laila stole some of my lines. But sometimes people would call her the thin one and me the fat one in the department. But I call her my inertia rattler. And you know Newton's laws of motion. There are also Newton's laws of graduation, and the third law states for every action towards graduation, there are equal and opposite distractions. And several of you were part of those distractions, but she was the only one, and she finished her PhD 1 year before me, and she got her professorship 1 year before me, so she was the one who was keeping me in track. That same thing, teaching the English part, which is, you don't have to go for dinner, you're choosing to go for dinner. That was some English that she was teaching me all the time. I didn't do very well with that. I don't think I have still done that, but from Prof, I also learned what it means to become a GPS for other people. And now, sometimes I say, think about it, that when you're doing your own PhD, you're a student in the process. You don't know the art of supervision. So sometimes when he would be talking to students, I would just sit and listen to what he was asking. And I think that may have taught me how to become a GPS myself, because these are my 5 students who I supervised and co-supervised. First one is Dr. Kevin Miller. Dr. Kevin was in the department with us, but now he's a researcher at IBM, upstate New York. Second one, Dean Jones. You heard from Dean, who is an AI consultant, and he lives in Paris. He teaches in our Masters in Applied Data Science program, and you know the time difference, and our classes are in evenings. I think he's teaching at midnight sometimes, or even beyond midnight, and that is real motivation for someone who was once part of our department, who's still willing to give back to the department. China Zunwa Wama. China is herself an academic in Claremont Graduate University in California, and she now has her own PhD students. Dr. Ricardo Anderson, I thought initially he would be away in England, but he's very much here. He is an academic who has stayed with us right here in Department of Computing, and he is marshalling the Masters in Applied Data Science program. So, he's our next data scientist who's coming up. Now, I think of Nadine as our COVID baby, because it was, we don't have a picture together. We actually just took a picture together today. She is a senior lecturer in UTech, and these were the 5 PhD students who I've supervised and co-supervised. Now, let's speak a little bit about traversing the helix of intellectual pathways. Let's come to the topic that you're all here to listen to. And sometimes in an academic journey, some people you may think you could think of their journey as a random walk. They publish something, then it's a probabilistic way of publishing another paper. And after a while, you may see that they may have, not sure whether mouses for this, but you may see that they may have a body of knowledge which is right out here, which seems like they are an expert in that area. So for some people, their journey may have been a random walk. For some people, their journey may have been a hill climbing algorithm. It's like, people go mountain climbing all the time. I have friends who just went to Everest Base Camp. I can't do that, but we can teach the hill climbing method. And the hill climbing method is that you're always taking a step in trying to improve yourself. You're always going from one state to the next state, and the next state has to be better than the current state. So people's journey could have been the hill climbing method. And by the way, these two are algorithms in computer science. But in talking to a colleague of mine, I realized that my journey had been that of a helix. I've been going around in circles, but thankfully, it's not the same center. The center has evolved. So hence, when I'm going around in circles, the circumference has been increasing, and I have actually reached somewhere else. And let me tell you about that. So, when I was here as an MPhil student, I heard of an IEEE conference in Montego Bay. So of course, have to write a paper. It's an IEEE conference in Jamaica. So spoke to my supervisor, Professor Han Reichelt, and we wrote a paper on neural networks, a very theoretical paper on different kinds of neural networks arrangements and the learning that was happening within them. This was in, not sure what happened here. I think the cord has moved. Just check the cord. I can advance. So from 1995, then my other paper was in 2022, which was also on neural networks. So the title of this paper is Implications of AI in Action, a Jamaican Perspective. And this was using various generative AI transformers that we were using, which are built on neural networks. We wrote about different creative applications that you can get from that, how you could get music, how you could get artwork, how you could get poetry. And some of the music you heard when you came in was actually AI generated. And I thought that, I don't even think you realized it was AI music. But I'll give you a little snapshot of what this music could be about. But this was a practical implications, applications of neural networks. So from theoretical to practical, in how many years? 1995 to 2002, I've been going around in circles, right? Circles of these neural networks. Hopefully something is firing somewhere. So that's the journey of the helix, the intellectual pathways of the helix. That's where it comes from that. Now, I am into modeling data, and modeling methods are what? They are artificial representations of something real. For example, you have these deep learning models. Just open it. And these deep learning models are artificial representations very much of our neural networks in our brain. So in my journey, I have been modeling different types of data sets and hence traversing these artificial pathways. And I'll speak to you about some of these artificial pathways. Now, coffee, asthma, creativity, what are those? Those are the domain areas that the data is coming from, these domain areas, and the helix is powered by this data. So these are the various data domains where my helix is being powered by, and I'll speak a little bit more about them. Now, we all know so much about data. People call data the new oil. Maurice, I know you always refer to data as the new oil. But if I may say that I think I disagree with that, because data doesn't, the more you use this data, more you use this asset, the better it gets. And the more you can even create and connect your data, and the more value it brings in. So it is even more powerful than oil, because oil, we all know what oil is, right? It's non-renewable. So whereas data, on the other hand, is an asset, the more you use it, the better it gets. The better its quality will get. And I have even stopped asking people, why are they collecting something? Maybe 10 years ago, I used to ask this question. I remember when some of my friends gave me a Fitbit, and I was wondering why I was collecting all that data. But then people found different ways of making innovative products with that data. But not just that data itself. It is how you are connecting the data. The power of connected data is just amazing. I don't know if you remember, even the infamous example of Cambridge Analytica, where they had taken data from multiple sources and what profiles they had created. Now, if you could just look at that example from the way they had connected data from multiple sources, was powerful. So always learn from all examples. Now, there are many different types of data. I'm sure you're familiar with all these kinds of data. First, we have our, the data which is in our databases. You can have data which is in textual documents. You have data in images. I'm not someone who works with images, but I have other colleagues who work with images. And things with images are, for a human, it's very easy to recognize someone, but for a computer to recognize, there's a lot of processing that has to happen in the background. And then we also have sounds, and I'll speak about some of these data sets as we go along. Now, I call it, I'm good at coming up with terms. So this is my WSKID pyramid. I don't know, I think they call it the DIKW officially, right? So Lila and Maurice, maybe we need to write something about the WSKID pyramid. And let me tell you about this WSKID pyramid. So at the bottom of the pyramid is data. So everyone pays taxes. So your taxes with TAJ, is your facts about you, which are stored. That would be data. What would be information? And this was information I think I had read in Gleaner many years ago, that except PAYEs, only 5,000 people pay income tax. This was, they summarized that data. So data, when it comes together in some kind of a formation, it becomes information. That is information. Now let's go from information to knowledge. Now, Mr. John Brown or Jane Doe, they have filled their taxes, and it gives them a score or a rating of their likelihood of being audited. So what is that likelihood? Now you have a mechanism of making that information more actionable at a personal level. Now, I'd always heard about wisdom. I'd never thought about what wisdom could be, but lately, with AI on the rise, this whole notion of making sure that we are using our knowledge in a proper discriminatory manner, how we apply it, whether it's fair, whether it is accountable, whether it's transparent, and whether it's being done in an ethical way. So making sure that when the data, when this knowledge is being applied, it is being done that, in a way which is ethical and transparent, and that becomes the wisdom of, I think, if this WSKID pyramid. And that's something we have to ensure is always there in our systems, that John Brown doesn't feel that they're likely to be victimized. When you have individual data, because it's all becoming, in this fifth industrial revolutionization, it is all personalization. It's human and machine, so it's all about you. But you need to have confidence that your knowledge about you is not going to be used unwisely. And I see Minister listening to me and shaking her head, so I know that point is well taken. That's what she's working towards. Now, a little bit about this domain in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and data science, of course. Now, AI is one of the oldest domains in computer science. It has existed since 1950. The term was coined in 1956. And there have been many definitions of AI and lots of like whether they are systems that think like humans, whether they act like humans, whether they are acting rationally or they're thinking rationally. So all these debates on where the definition of AI should be. But one thing is clear over these 70 odd years, that these systems are autonomous and they are adaptable. Now, AI has been messed up by, I think, our tech industry, and all my colleagues agree with me, because people use AI and machine learning interchangeably. When somebody is talking about AI in the industry, they used to typically talk about machine learning. AI is more than that. So fields like knowledge-based systems, robotics, natural language processing. I think with generative AI, that boundary is getting probably a little bit more fuzzier. But before, industry used to just call AI and machine learning one of the same thing. And when machine learning becomes even more complex, is what we call deep learning. So what is this new world of data science? Data science is the field that is bringing the data. So the AI algorithms existed, the ones that we're using now, for the longest while. But that data was not there. The computation power was not there. So the data science field is the one staging that data, bringing that data to apply to these algorithms. And it's also important to note, there are many researchers here, that it's not just always about applying the algorithm. There is much more than life requires when you're actually working on with real data. Then to this, I thought, let me also add knowledge management, because knowledge management is about managing knowledge in organizations. There are, there's data, there are people, there are processes, and that also becomes a subset of AI and data science. All the techniques from there basically help you to manage knowledge within organizations. And I think Lala and I, with Prof, had done a co-edited book on knowledge management. And thankfully, we had our in-house librarian helping us, Mrs. Rao, who helped us so much in the learning the editing process. I want to now take you through, I remember coffee, asthma, and creativity. So let's speak a little bit about coffee. And I'm very happy to see some people sitting here in the audience, because I was an MPhil student trying to find a project. I knew I had to build an expert system. I didn't know on what. I even went on Kingston Harbor rides to try to figure out about water quality. I didn't know if I was measuring water quality of harbor or a beaker, water in the beaker. So it was, I was a student just learning about this research monster which was there. And then when I learned a little bit about expert systems, which is getting the knowledge from experts and building a system, I was like, I have experts in front of me for coffee, pests, and management of diseases. Professor Mansingh and his two students, Dwight Robinson, who was working on coffee berry borer, and Kathy Dilip, who was working on leaf miner. Did I get the order right? Well, I haven't forgotten. So they became my two experts, and I built an expert system for managing coffee, pests, and diseases. So I, of course, spoke to them, harassed them, got all the knowledge from their minds, CARDI, Caribbean Agricultural Research Development Institute. I went to them for knowledge on diseases, and I built this expert system, which is, of course, part of AI world. And what happens in these expert systems is that you codify the knowledge from these experts. You create this rule base and facts, and you have a reasoning mechanism so that when the user enters something in this graphical interface, they are able to get a response as to what they should be doing. Expert systems are designed to mimic an expert. So whatever a human expert would be doing, that's what they were supposed to do. So thanks to them, these two, and of course the knowledge czar who was sitting on top of them, Professor Mansingh, that I was able to get my MPhil. And these were just some of the results from this paper. And this paper, when I wrote it, this was my first journal paper, and when I wrote it, I think when I sent it one place, came back with a rejection, and I put it on a shelf for 4 years, 5 years. Prof came to teach us, and Lala told him, Gunjan has this paper sitting on a shelf, and he told me to take it out. And all he did was ask me to put some tables and some formatting, and we submitted to a relevant journal, and it was accepted. So, that's why you understand why the GPS is so important. And the inertia rattler. The GPS and the inertia rattler both helped me together to get my first journal publication. And these are just some of the results from the CPEST. Now, so this was an expert system which was codifying experts' knowledge into a system and reasoning with it. Then let's come to asthma. And asthma was a domain area that I worked with my student Chinna Zunwa Wama. Now Chinna had done her physics in signals and in sounds, acoustics, so she knew a lot about these. So what we did was we also built a knowledge-based system, but it wasn't, now remember this was 1999 and now she graduated in 2018. So there is like, again, many years separating us. So this system is a little bit more evolved now. So we are using the same concept of a knowledge-based system, but you know, for asthma, you all are familiar with breathing sounds, right? And the breathing sounds is where you hear the various, whether it is a wheeze or if it's a stridor or if it's some other kind of a sound. So what we did was we used some of the sensors in the smartphones, and especially the ones using a microphone, was to record the breathing sounds. And we used machine learning techniques to actually classify them. So what we got was, and you know, so data was coming from the sensors, data was coming from the users, medical history, data was coming even from domain experts, and we codified it. And you're able to give recommendations to the medical practitioners. We never say we are replacing anyone, especially doctors. I can't say that, right? We are always a decision support system, assisting people. So, you know, in this, when we got these breathing sounds, it was actually very hard to convince our ethical bodies here that we just wanted these, you know, people, we wanted to record the breathing sounds. People didn't understand data like this at that time. I think we went through the ethics a long time, and afterwards we just found a data set from another university. They shared it with us of these breathing sounds, which we used for training our system to identify whether a given breathing sound, whether it's a wheeze or if it is another kind, which could be a stridor or a cough or a clearing of a throat, what is it exactly? Now, to this data, you know, we always have to do this feature extraction. So we took this data, got some spectral parameters from them, some low-level acoustic parameters, and we performed machine learning on them. And we used techniques like simple vector machines, k nearest neighbor, random forest. You know, random forest is not just going for a walk. It's actually a technique where you have decision trees, and when you have multiple decision trees, how creative. They call it a random forest. So we used that, and we were, as you can see from the images, that it could detect the sound. It could detect whether it's a wheeze or if it's a stridor. And then Chinna used all that, and we built this knowledge-based system, and it was based on uncertainty, because often in medical domain, you can't say a piece of knowledge is going to be true all the time. You can say it's going to be true 70% of the times. And I see many doctors here. So even a piece of evidence, it cannot say that it will always lead to something like that. So there's a reasoning system called uncertainty in rules, which one, you know, age-old expert systems called Mansingh was built based on that. And we used that concept of reasoning under uncertainty and developed this system. So given a person, you know, even their ambient conditions of temperature, humidity, and it goes through a reasoning process, and you can see in the reasoning process here, it probably gave EIB and EIA with 0.85, and then a medical practitioner can use this data to, you know, so these systems can be used for your telemedicine or when you're not around with a patient. So I want to speak a little bit about the knowledge discovery bit. And people always think of modeling as a wow thing, right? But modeling is just a small component in this multi-stage process model. So we start with the business understanding or the research understanding, the question itself. That has to be very important. And then we have to see whether we have the relevant data, or we can collect the relevant data. And I'll speak to some of the components about this later on too. And then we come to modeling. Now, modeling seems the most exciting one to most people, but the truth is, it is part of this process cycle, and we should never forget that. Now, applying this cycle of KDDM, we applied it to multiple domains, multiple data sets. These are all structured data sets. We worked on internet banking users. We worked with the data set that our colleague, Dr. Annette Mills from University of Canterbury in Christchurch had worked on. So she shared that data set with us, and we were trying to find profile of people who are likely to use internet banking. This was much earlier, of course. Then I worked with my friend, Professor Asnani. She just had her lecture 2 weeks ago. She didn't show this paper, so I had to show this paper. We used the data set from sickle cell on quality of life to determine, to apply machine learning techniques to it. Now, when there is data, you will find a model, right? How do you know that is the best model? That's where the data scientist comes in. They have to do adequate experimentation to ensure that the first model is not the one you're taking for granted, because I think on the quality of life data set, I had built 43 models using multiple techniques. And then even those techniques, you could have multiple criteria for assessing them. It doesn't have to be just one accuracy you're interested in. And you know, sometimes you have to look at the silver lining on everything, because what COVID has taught people is to understand what a true positive and a true negative means, or a false positive or a false negative is, right? So we don't have to worry about just accuracy all the time. What if we are interested in the true positive rates? How many true positives are we getting from this model? Or how many true negatives we are getting from a model? So there may be multiple criteria for assessment, and I often you know, I often go and do many training sessions. Anybody says that they have a new tool which is like can give you the best model, I'll go attend it. And after a while, I just sit back and say they're making a fool of everyone. So if you're interested in doing modeling, please don't use those ready-made tools. You need the programmers to really sit and work with your data and determine what are the criteria that are important to you. And you use those in creating these models and do adequate experimentation to find that you can really find the best model for the data set that you have. Now, you know, we had worked on many projects. These were just 2 examples using the KDDM I showed you. Now, and in this project, it was with Professor Rao and Dr. McNaughton. And I think the word that we came up with was, Lila came up with was pracademics, or Maurice, you came up with that. Practitioners and academic, and I think that became very important, that when we are now dealing with, we are a small developing nation with lots of SMEs, small and medium-sized companies. So how do we help them in their data journey? And the important thing is, it's really important to know how you're going to be helping people in the data journey, because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. You all agree with that, right? So if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So we wrote this book. I don't like the name of the book, it's boring, but Business Intelligence for SMEs, an agile roadmap towards business sustainability. But what this book is exciting, if I can say that, and I think the most excitement was when before every chapter we put a relevant quote. I think that created a lot of excitement when we were selecting which quotes we were putting in this book. Now, what happened, you know, we have actually been using this book in application. And if I was to just show you this flowchart here, and you know, people from the business world may be interested in that often when we are, you know, you have heard this term, analytical competitors, or you may not have heard the term, but you know companies like Amazon's, TikTok's, who live and breathe data, right? Everything, data is part of the strategy. Everything is data. So those are the analytical competitors. How does a small company here become an analytical competitor? Often what happens is that they will do some analytics, and they will remain at the localized analytics. Like, you know, they have a little bubble here or a little bubble here of analytics or some project happening there. How do you make that into, you know, that organization to really become an analytical aspirant or an analytical company or an analytical competitor? So for that, in our book, we had this AIMS BI, which was an agile integrated methodology for strategic BI. It was a multiple step process which culminates into designing this BI roadmap. And BI is business intelligence, creating business intelligence, which is analytics in organizations. Now, I think we have applied this to many organizations to say confidently that it works for SMEs, right? I want to see some agreement from my co-authors on that. Now, you heard from Dean Jones, the young man who is actually an AI consultant in Paris. And his research was very exciting, I thought. I really wish I could have kept him back in Jamaica. He worked on natural language, and I'm showing you different kinds of data sets. I've showed you, structured data, sounds, which was another data. Now this is text, data in texts. So he had this experiment. So in his thesis, he worked with, let's say, witness statements. You have a witness statements. What would typically people do? People would read these witness statements and come out with what is controversial and what is reliable within these statements, right? Those are something that the human expert would do. So using these algorithms, which we were calling, I pulled it out again. I shouldn't move too much. So using these algorithms is PHCI, post hoc collective intelligence. The work of the humans can be replaced by these algorithms. And these algorithms can help you find what is controversial and what is reliable. And for that, he used these multiple algorithms. He created some of them, and some of the algorithms were about word comparison, sentence similarity. And you would wonder, what a big deal about that? But just imagine, he is walking and she is running. Trying to understand the similarity between this sentence is probably, you would think they're similar, but what is the difference between these two sentences? Even that becomes important. And what he did in these witness statements was that he took a video and he had people describe what was happening. So most people were writing the right thing that was happening. Then he also inserted some incorrect statements. And his PHCI framework could assist in identifying what was similar and what was not similar. See, similar is probably many people can do, but I think the algorithm that could also determine what was not similar. So where the red shows where the crowd is in disagreement, and the green shows where the crowd is in agreement. So that was some, kind of processing. I'm showing you what we did on textual data. Now, last one now. So we have done coffee, we have done asthma. Let's come to creativity. And in creativity, in computing, Alan Turing was a big man. And Alan Turing had this Turing test, which said that if a human is unable to determine whether an output, and in this case an artistic work, is from a human or from a machine, then that machine passes the Turing test. And for years, people are competing to create these bots which can pass the Turing test. They have a competition every year. I think I have to see what is happening in this field after generative AI. But what we did was that if this output that is being generated, and this output, you can't determine whether it is from a human or from a computer, what are the implications for that? So this research project was a grant from City University, where two of my colleagues, they're lawyers, Enrico Bonadia and Mark Mimbler. They came to us and said, can we have workshops in Kingston where we can work with people from the legal industry, people from the technology industry, people from creative industry, to have a discussion on what should be the legal implications of AI AI generating creative work. Remember, this was 2021. This was pre-ChatGPT. ChatGPT came in 2022 November. So during that time, we used these tools because these tools only the researchers were using. What happened in November 2022 was that these tools were brought to the fingertips of every common person. So now they could actually see what is happening. But before we could tell these people, the technology people maybe new, but the lawyers, for them to understand the implications of what does it mean for this work to be creative. I want to show you this.
You know it's gonna be alright. Let the darkness spread away, and you deep down feel the same. Let the fire burn, just as long as I ain't there.
That was country music. And did you think the reggae song was a bad recording? So was it truly a bad recording than the country music? Or, so this is a neural network. Jukebox is a neural network that creates music. So, or was it that these 1.2 million songs that were used to create this music, there was not enough reggae in it? Right? So what is the point I'm making here? And the point I'm making is you are relying on these tools, you don't know where they have taken the data, and you're relying on the results. Where is that data? Is your own representative data in there? And I often joke with students in classrooms saying that if there was a model for identifying criminals in New York City, and if we used it in Jamaica just as it is, what would happen? There are serious implications of taking models from elsewhere and using them here without understanding what is the data that has been used to build it. So in this case, this data seemed like just a poor recording of a reggae song, but it's actually that representative data is not in there. Now, one of my students, Matthew, he's an AI researcher. When we had done this workshop with the lawyers and the creative industries people, he generated that poem. I think it was Run the Race. You recognize the style? Miss Bennett? And now, and it was, I think that it was Olympics year, so he did the Run the Race. He did that in GPT-3. I did this one in GPT 3.5 recently. If I try and read it, Atisha will come and put some tape on my mouth. So you see the implications that I am raising here? What are the implications of these works being created by these generative or by AI tools? And we had done a survey of the 33 participants we had in these, and this was in 2021. They thought, the 42% thought for if an AI software creates a piece of music, art, or literary work, who should own the copyright? Person, entity who uses the AI software to create. So that is what they thought that time. Now, and we look here, who should be responsible for an AI program that infringes intellectual property? And again, the maximum, 45%, is the person who's using the AI. So hence, the person who is using the AI had better be careful that they are doing the right thing. That's the important bit here. And where we need to go with this, I think that's still an open discussion. I don't think we have found answers to that. I don't want you all to think that research only happens in our MPhil and PhD programs. This last academic year, we have these capstone students in our department, and there are many good projects, many good projects. But this was a group I supervised, and I have to tell you about them. So they built this Chatgood. The name of this tool, which is a little bit like Duolingo, it's an automatic speech recognition tailored for Patois. So you can practice your vocabulary and listening and speaking skills. However hard I try, for Wagwan, I can only get 60%. And Terry was from our faculty office, was sitting next to me, and she got 98%. So, you know, these are the kinds of applications and apps our students are creating. But often these apps literally remain as projects, and that's something we have to work together to ensure that they can reach. This should be probably downloaded by tourists who are coming to Jamaica, and you should be using it. So I'm coming to the end of my talk, and I think I'm very passionate about this, that machine learning is part of this, modeling. Machine learning is nothing but modeling, but it is part of this, process model where it is just a component. And if you take a look at the effort that is spent in, they were just looking at two phases, in data and in modeling. Anything in blue is modeling related. Anything that's pink to maroon is data related. And you can see the effort that Forbes is saying. 80% of the effort is data related, and only 20% is modeling related. So that is something very powerful. We all have to understand that. And that's why data science comes in, because there is a lot of data science related aspect which you have to do before you can even apply the algorithms. And I feel very passionately about it because you can take data from multiple sources. You can even have large volumes of data, large variety of data. You can connect data, have bits of data, but you really need to understand your data and do data preparation. To me, mark of a good data scientist is someone who can do data preparation. And we have done many projects. Prof, you and I, Laila, Maurice, I think every time we have done a project, we have come up with some new way of preparing data, and that's what I think got me to write this paper. Is data science art or a science? It is an art just now, but the more we write about it, it becomes a science. And if I could just share a small example that we had done. We had worked with a financial company, and we were trying to build risk profiles. Now, risk profiles on how much you have in your bank account or your demographics is boring. How much are you spending? What is your behavior? What is your behavior using the point of sales machines, right? So discretionary spending, non-discretionary spending. So we had connected data. Remember we spoke about the power of connecting data? So connecting data and using behavioral data, which is what you're doing, versus what we know about you, which is in your demographics. And with that, you try and build these risk profiles, and you can get a lot of power from that data. And those projects happen only because we are doing, or we are mindful about data preparation. If you are not doing your data preparation correctly, that's the difference between an A and a B in the real analytical world. Because you can always apply an analytical technique. That's the easiest bit. So my perspective is, in the data science field, that a good analyst is good at data preparation or is mindful about that. Let me speak. I am standing in a place where education occurs. So just speak about a few of our programs that we have. This is on the left. We have a summer camp for high school students, 50 high school students taken across the length and breadth of Jamaica, across 14 parishes. It's a free residential coding program. One student thought it was a scam, because we are working with our collaborators from Addis Coders, and our collaborators, Professor Jelani Nelson, he's in University of Berkeley, another lecturer is from Harvard University. So all these universities are collaborating with UV. It is free, and it is for coding at UWI. So he thought it's a scam. Oh, I've forgotten the main thing. Our ambassador for the program is Chronix Jamar McNaughton. Now, why is Jamar McNaughton, I hope you all know who Chronix is, sponsoring a coding program? He's our ambassador for the program. So, it's good to bring people from across the cross section of our society to be mindful, to get the young people energized about this coding world. And we have run this program for 2 years, and it's going very well. I see my fellow co-organizer, my head, Dr. Daniel Fokum, sitting there. You know, every time July comes, I'm irritated because it takes away my summer. I'm working like crazy on this camp. But in the end, when we have a graduation ceremony right here, it is just so powerful that I feel so happy that I did spend my 4 weeks working towards this camp. This is, again, a very interesting public-private partnership that university we have with industry. Department of Computing works very closely with Mona School of Business and Management. And we have partnered with them and with NCB to create an Agile lab right here on campus. So in this Agile lab, we are in our cohort 6. And what is this Agile lab? I think of this Agile lab as a targeted internship. So we take 15 students every year, and we train them, in the concepts that NCB wants them to be trained. And it's a 16-week program, so it's like 4 months, and everybody gets paid in this process. And what I call this internship is that we in the department with our students have baked the cake already, but the icing is put during this internship time. And I can tell you, even with what is happening in this institution, they are very happy with our students, and all my students still have their jobs. Somebody came and asked me, "You teach in this room?" And I said, yes. And some of these students, this is our first year cohort, and 250 of them sit in this room. There's another evening cohort. And then when I go into the assembly hall and I see them taking the exam, it makes me very happy. There's a wow moment even I get that all these are our students, our department students. And these are the generators of our future. Then, I've spoken about our Masters in Applied Data Science, and these are just some of the graduates of our Masters in Applied Data Science. I think it's in its 4th cohort, and this program is doing very well, as we know that there is a need for data scientists in the world, in the world, and also in Jamaica. So I have people from business who tell me they can't find data scientists here. I said, you can find, but I hope you're willing to pay them the same, that you are willing to pay someone from outside. So there are people who are being trained in this field, and it's very important that we keep them here in Jamaica. And then my 2 young researchers who will soon be in their red gowns with their hats and be PhD, Alton Bodley and Matthew Stone. And Alton, you're a little late in your research. He's writing, his research is on using cricketing data to predict the best one-day cricket team. If he had done it last year, if he had finished it last year, we would have been in the World Cup, and who knows, in the finals also. But his data, his algorithms, and the system that he's building will help us. And Matthew, what can I say about Matthew? He's one of those real brilliant AI researchers. His research is in reinforcement learning. He's talking about attention, a modular attention network, and attention may seem like you all to just stand attentive, but even in this generative AI model, it is this word attention which has made them so different from what was happening before. So, my colleagues from the technology field will understand that Matthew was talking about attention even before generative AI made it so popular. So these 2 are, my new, hopefully will soon graduate and will take over what is happening in this domain. And AI is for all, and my dream is to have an AI hub, or maybe an AI Helix now, very much here at University of West Indies, because the continued action needs to go on. And if we have to make sure that everyone in the country can participate, we need a place where problems can be solved for everyone. It can be for people from industry, it can be people from academia, because even academia needs to work together. I've shown you enough examples that, you know, in medicine and technology, how they come together, and social sciences, technology. I mean, it's every space will be connected with AI. And as Andrew Nung, a big researcher from Stanford, says, AI is the new electricity. So let's make sure in Jamaica we are not left behind. And I created that, by the way, using DALL-E. So I hope that my presentation will encourage other researchers to engage in their own explorations of their own helixes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mansingh. But please don't take your seat just yet. Can you join me?
Can I take this out?
Sure. And while we're just waiting for one or two items, I didn't get a chance earlier to recognize and say welcome to Dr. Dana Dixon. Where is she? Yes. Hi. And to Prof. Gordon Shirley. Evening, sir. Nice that you came. So we would like to just thank you very much. Prof. Taylor, if you could also join us. Okay.
If he's still here.
No, I think he left. So we'd also like to just give Prof. Mansingh a couple of tokens to commemorate this very auspicious occasion. And then one more, Prof.
Yes, just resting.
Looking forward to seeing you at number one. And we have as well a collection of articles from the local print media that either include photographs of Dr. Mansingh, articles that she has written, or articles that mention her in some way, form, or fashion. Thank you very much, Prof.
She wants to discuss.
Oh, sure. We also have one other gift that I think is being presented by all her family. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Brunson. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We can never say thank you enough for you to have decided to spend some of your very valuable time with us. It was a pleasure being here with you. It was a great pleasure to hear Gunjan. And I'll hand over now to the head of our department and the head of our family, which is the Department of Computing, Dr. Daniel Folcom. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Curtis. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the last speaker, and since I'm keeping everyone away from refreshments and socializing, I'll try to be very brief. It's my honor to thank several people for their roles in bringing together this evening's event, which has come together beautifully, I think. Thanks to Dr. Curtis Busby Earle for his opening remarks and for chairing the ceremony, and to Professor Michael Taylor for bringing greetings. Your Excellency, Mr. Maskui Rungsung, thank you for your remarks. And to Professor Kweku Mwata Ose Bryson, you made a long trek from the East Coast of the US to be here, and thank you for your part. I also want to recognize Anna Golding Mohammed, who made a trip from Trinidad to be here. My understanding is that she has been a part of every major event in Gunjan's life over the last 30 years or so. And thanks to Dean Jones, who provided the reading, for the recording rather, for his remarks. And thanks to Professor Lila Rao Graham for her introduction of Professor Mansingh. Now, in addition to the people whom we saw in front of us, there have been other people who have performed roles in preparing for this event. And I want to thank Mrs. Abraham Green, who just brought the picture, and also Mrs. Terry Ann Collins Frey in the faculty office. They did some back office work getting us ready. And I also want to recognize Professor Mansingh's family for their role in supporting her, that she could provide such excellent scholarship, and she's recognized with her professorship. And so thank you all for coming to support Professor Mansingh, and we look forward to keeping the lines of communication open between you and the Department of Computing, this faculty, the Faculty of Science and Technology, and the University of the West Indies writ large. And so with that, we have come to the end of the ceremony, and please join us on the outside for refreshments. The food has been prepared by Vivek Chatani from a Tamarind Restaurant. So thank you all for coming.
I'd like to take some photographs with you and the family. And anyone else that you want to take some photographs with.